Mikhail Bakhtin wrote that reading a novel as if it were just one voice is like transposing an orchestra onto a piano. This is what Bakhtin demonstrates in his essay, The Dialogic Imagination. Since the 1500s, stories are told as a dialogue between different contemporary social voices. On my annual rewatch of A Charlie Brown Christmas, I realized that this is exactly what's going on here.
What's going on here?
First, let us define Bakhtin's concept, heteroglossia. Any one language, such as English, contains multiple types of discourse, or languages. For example, religious language.
Maybe carrying soil that was trod upon by Solomon, or even Nebuchadnezzar.
Or business language.
Real estate.
Or whatever new slang the young generation is using. These diverse language styles point to certain social positions and value systems.
I just don't understand Christmas, I guess.
As Charlie talks with his peers, we begin to see, or rather hear, what he doesn't get.
As they say on TV, the mere fact that you realize you need help indicates that you are not too far gone. I think we better pinpoint your fears. If we can find out what you're afraid of, we can label it. Spectacular, super colossal, neighborhood Christmas lights and display contest. My own dog gone commercial. I can't stand it. Oh.
Charlie cannot connect to Christmas because he just can't find it in these popular social perspectives around him. The languages of television, psychoanalytic self-help, business, and consumerism ring hollow for him.
That beautiful sound of cold, hard cash.
At the play, we encounter yet another social language. Today's viewers may miss that this is a caricature of 1960s youth culture, with jazz music, dancing, and even snapping. Heteroglossia shows us what conversations are going on in the culture of the day. Charlie Brown wants to stick to tradition. Everyone else prefers the modern, consumerist version of Christmas. This brings us to Bakhtin's second concept, authorial distance, that an author's perspective is not necessarily the same as the perspectives we encounter in the story.
We all know that Christmas is a big commercial racket.
We hear Lucy say that Christmas is commercial, but that doesn't mean that's what Charles Schulz thinks. Instead, in stories like these, we have multiple opposing perspectives, and Bakhtin reminds us that an author may not completely agree with any one of them. But bringing these perspectives into dialogue with one another reveals the limitations and strengths of each of them. Bakhtin calls this dialogism. Sometimes authors make a dialogue of social discourses in the words of a single character. Here, Schulz brings two styles of language together in Lucy's line. First, a resigned acceptance of commercialism.
Look, Charlie, let's face it. We all know that Christmas is a big commercial racket.
This sounds reasonable. But then Lucy adds something.
It's run by a big Eastern syndicate, you know.
This sounds more like the language of conspiracy theory, perhaps about big Eastern powers during the Cold War. It's actually an inside joke about the New York syndicate that ran the newspapers where the Peanuts comic strip was published. But this telling conspiracy theory whisper, you know, matches the we all know that started the first sentence. Schulz puts an ironic spin on the first language by juxtaposing it with the second.
We need a Christmas tree. Hey, perhaps a tree. A great, big, shiny aluminum Christmas tree.
Based on these lines, we can already tell we're going to have a clash of perspectives about this tree as well. And when we get to the tree lot, we discover that Christmas trees, too, have been modernized.
This really brings Christmas close to a person.
This line is what Bakhtin calls double-voiced discourse. Linus is repeating a popular social discourse, maybe the language of advertising, that these trees will bring Christmas close to you. But he is being sarcastic. He is putting his own spin on someone else's words.
I don't know, Charlie Brown. Remember what Lucy said? This doesn't seem to fit the modern spirit.
This is what the other kids will say. Linus doesn't share that opinion, but he is warning Charlie Brown about it. His own voice coexists with another voice in the same sentence. But now we must take an aside and talk about the fool. Bakhtin loves his fools. You have the rogue who infiltrates high society. You have the clown who mimics and mocks. And then you have the fool, the character who just doesn't understand the society around him. Bakhtin calls this a deliberate stupidity.
Boy, are you stupid, Charlie Brown.
The author uses the fool to show the limits of a social worldview. Charlie Brown just doesn't understand what they want, and this fool's outsider perspective is Charles Schulz's way of suggesting that the consumerist Christmas they want may not be enough.
Isn't there anyone who knows what Christmas is all about? Sure, Charlie Brown. I can tell you what Christmas is all about.
The cacophony of loud but empty languages comes to a halt.
When money, money, money. Or maybe you have pantophobia. Isn't it a great play?
We hear a new language, that of the King James Bible, the only widely available English Bible translation in the mid-1960s.
The Lord came upon them. The glory of the Lord shone round about.
Notice how the film breaks the fourth wall here.
Lights, please.
The camera recedes back one level from the normal stage of the TV special and shows the stage itself. The film treats this as a meta-discourse, one that transcends our everyday world.
For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord.
One way I think this avoids being preachy is Bakhtin's distinction between authoritative and internally persuasive discourse. This doesn't present the Bible verses from a position of authority. The camera descends on Linus from above, emphasizing his smallness. And we know that he as a character has his own problems.
You think you're so smart with that blanket. What are you going to do with it when you grow up?
And the Bible story is so unrelated to the conflict about our Christmas tree that it doesn't tell Charlie directly what to do. What happens next is like dream logic. Somehow these words spoke to him on the inside. We hear Charlie remembering these words as an internally persuasive discourse that he can understand in his own way, in his own context.
Tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. And this shall be a sign unto you.
It doesn't create a clear framework for his next actions, but it inspires him to transcend the dualistic conflict between tradition and modernity. Nor does it solve all his problems.
I've killed it.
Nobody ends up with all the answers. That doesn't mean nothing transcends our human perspectives. A Charlie Brown Christmas leads us to a spiritual climax articulated by the Bible and Charles Wesley's hymn, and by immersion in God's creation itself. Nature, as opposed to the manufactured stuff of modern consumerism. But apart from the discourses of God and of nature, we are stuck with our very limited human languages, and these languages represent partial perspectives in conflict with one another. What art like this reminds us is that our social conflict can be a dialogue. Different people have different perspectives, but this is how we can learn from one another, because nobody has it all figured out. This goes for art as well.
What do you mean Beethoven wasn't so great?
He never got his picture on bubblegum cards, did he? Have you ever seen his picture on a bubblegum card?
Popular low culture helps bring high culture art down to earth.
Good grief.
Neither one is completely rejected or exclusively affirmed. Along these lines, you may be surprised to learn that Charles Schulz didn't like jazz. He much preferred Beethoven. But I think we can all agree that these television specials are enriched by Vince Guaraldi's incorporation of this modern music. So this Christmas special is traditional and modern at the same time. It doesn't just praise tradition. It takes new things too, like jazz, and makes something new. So Chuck, I think we can answer your question.
What's going on here?
It's the dialogic imagination, Charlie Brown.